We begin with that breaking news. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has appointed former Governor General David Johnston to investigate interference by the Chinese government in Canadian elections. Marco Mendicino is the Minister of Public Safety. He joins me now. Minister, welcome back. We seem to be doing this fairly regularly. Appreciate the time.
We do. Thanks.
I'd like to start with the choice. Why David Johnston?
Well, I think for a number of obvious reasons. First, as a past Governor General, as somebody who has headed up a number of Canadian university institutions, as somebody with extensive experience in the law, as an academic, and above all, as a citizen who has given back whenever his country has asked for, he's virtually, he is, in fact, unimpeachable as a choice for the special rapporteur, a position which we will look to help us navigate the next steps to fighting foreign interference and protecting our institutions. And I know he looks forward to starting that work very quickly.
The mandate is yet to be determined, but the press release says that Mr. Johnston will have wide mandate to look into foreign interference in the last two federal general elections. Does that mean his work will be confined simply to the election periods, or it can be a broader look at foreign interference in general, like the concerns we're hearing from the Chinese-Canadian community?
I think you fairly characterized it. He will have a sufficiently wide and flexible mandate to dig into some of the questions that have been raised around past elections, working closely with review agencies and the Committee of Parliamentarians that studies this work as well. He will have the kind of robust access that he needs to classified information and the people who work in this space, and then to put forward a set of recommendations which will help us to advance this important work. And as we've said in the past, David, the government intends to respect whatever recommendations David Johnston puts forward.
I know one of the first decisions you would like the special rapporteur to make is whether or not to hold a public inquiry of some form. The news release specifically says whether it could be a formal inquiry, a judicial review, or another independent review process. How quickly in his time do you expect Mr. Johnston to make a decision or a recommendation on that?
Well, I think that's precisely what we hope to get to the bottom of in very, very short order. Mr. Johnston will appreciate, as does the government, that these are pressing and urgent issues. We said about 10 days ago that we intended to make this appointment of special rapporteur. We're now making good on it. On Friday, I launched consultations to create a foreign transparency registry. We said that we would conclude that on May 9th inside of 60 days. So the government is moving forward as quickly as we possibly can, but we also want to make sure that we get it right. Mr. Johnston will have more to say exactly about the nature of his work, the pace of it, et cetera, in the coming weeks.
Right. So it says we'll be working with Mr. Johnston, the we being you, I'm reading for the press release, to finalize his mandate in the coming days, and it will be made public. I know there's timeline questions. Is that something we get this week, next week? How long before you finalize the mandate and he's fully on the job, do you think?
As quickly as we can. We do want to have the kind of conversation that you would expect that we would have to get his input as well on the mandate. But I think he appreciates that these issues are of significant importance, as does the government. And when you take a look at our track record on this, we've always taken national security with the utmost seriousness, putting in place the kind of new powers, resources, as well as the kind of transparency that is necessary to reassure Canadians that they can have confidence in their institutions. Today is another important step in that direction.
I just want to make sure, Minister, I understand the sequencing, because you're going to you say he will have a wide mandate to look into foreign interference in the last two federal elections. Do you expect that work to be done by the rapporteur before a verdict is rendered on whether or not to have some sort of an inquiry or a review, or can they happen in tandem, that the rapporteur does their work and can also say, yes, we want a public inquiry, and then you start that process once you get the green light? How do you see those things lining up?
Well, I think you can be confident that we will get the sequencing right, and we want to make sure that we take the time to have that conversation with Mr. Johnston so that this work is done constructively. Both he in his capacity as special rapporteur, along with the work that is being done by other review agencies and parliamentarians, again, across partisan divides. I would point to the Committee of Parliamentarians as an example of that, so that we can put forward the next steps in the proper sequence so that we can continue to protect our institutions.
How long do you think he's going to have to do his work, sir? Are we talking weeks, months, years? I mean, what's your sense of the shelf life of this position and the mandate that David Johnston will be tasked with?
David, I think you're right to emphasize timelines. What I can tell you is that we've moved quickly to appoint Mr. Johnston to this role. We're moving quickly to put in place other tools to protect our institutions from foreign interference, like the consultation process with regards to the Foreign Transparency Registry. We understand that this work is urgent, and we will continue to work very closely with Mr. Johnston to make sure that we get this work done in a timely fashion, but we also want to make sure that we get it right. There are some complexities to it, as you know, but I'm confident that Mr. Johnston has the skills, the experience, and most importantly, the wisdom to help us navigate those next steps.
You consulted with the opposition parties or reached out to the opposition parties, I presume, based on the past statements by the Prime Minister and others. Was it David Johnston's name run by the Conservatives, the New Democrats, the Bloc Québécois in advance, or did they find out about it when the rest of the world did?
Well, as you know, we've been engaging the opposition on not only this important issue, but others with regards to national security, including in Parliament, including through the work of the Committee of Parliamentarians, where there is collaboration amongst all recognized parties in the chamber. I'd like to see us do more of that. As I've said in the past, it is worrisome at times when we see Mr. Poilievre try to make this a partisan issue. I hope we can put this behind us, especially with somebody like Mr. Johnston, who again has served Conservative and Liberal governments. But we recognize, and they did, I should point out, the opposition did have an opportunity to provide input into the selection. But what's most important now is that we rally behind Mr. Johnston, given the importance and the significance of his work.
I wonder, sir, if you think that will happen. I look at Maurice Rosenberg and the way he was criticized because of his role with the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. David Johnston has also had a role with the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation as a member, not as the CEO, as Mr. Rosenberg. Given the criticism we saw from Maurice Rosenberg, at one point even being referred to as a crony, how do you expect the Conservatives will react to the appointment of David Johnston, given his connection to the foundation that bears the name of the Prime Minister's father?
Time will tell how the Conservatives respond. I would say that words and actions on the matter of national security matter a lot, and it is our hope that they will see themselves past what I would describe as a rough patch where they have descended into the fray of partisanship unnecessarily, and rather see in Mr. Johnston somebody who has impeccable experience and qualities to bring to this role. And if we do this work together, I think all Canadians will be the better for it. Foreign interference is a complex, pressing issue vis-a-vis our economy, vis-a-vis our academic research sector, vis-a-vis our communities, vis-a-vis our elections, which is our most sacred aspect of democratic institutions. So we need a Team Canada approach here. Yes, we're a democracy. Yes, we need to have robust and vigorous debates around our policy choices, and that is one of the great engines of our forward progress. But when it comes to foreign interference, we should steer clear of partisanship, and we should instead see ourselves across the partisan divide so that we can reinforce Canadians' confidence in their institutions.
We've already seen criticism of this appointment from Jenny Byrne, who is a close confidant and advisor of Pierre Poilievre, casting doubt on Mr. Johnston's impartiality because of his past roles with things like the Debate Commission, and casting doubt on the notion that he will independently make a decision on an inquiry. When you see that kind of initial reaction from someone so close and integral to Mr. Poilievre's political apparatus, I mean, what's your reaction to that?
Well, look, I think it's discouraging. Stephen Harper appointed David Johnston as Governor General. He served in that role as 7 years. He did it regardless of partisan stripe. And he is someone who puts country above himself. And in my experience, when you work with people like David Johnston, someone with the character, with the professional background, and with the truly remarkable record of public service, I think we can be confident that he is going to do this work without any prejudice towards partisanship or party affiliation. That has been, again, his record consistently. And as a result of that, I think we can be confident that he will put forward the best possible recommendations which all Canadians can rally behind to protect our institutions.
Okay, Minister Mendicino, thank you so much for your time. That's Marco Mendicino, the Minister of Public Safety. Thank you, sir.